Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm just curious, who was around this morning and saw the film Marchers on Blair Mountain? Okay, a good number of people. Okay. Then I think for those who weren't here, I might just play a couple minutes from the middle just to give folks kind of a starting point, because I'm going to spend the time talking about kind of the filmmaking process down there. The one sentence intro is two years ago there was a march, several hundred people marched 50 miles on Blair Mountain. It's a mountain in West Virginia that still is under threat of mountaintop removal, coal mining, a type of mining where they blow the tops off of mountains, and it's really disastrous for the environment, the economy, and people's health. And so I spent time as a marcher also taking video and then doing some of the media there, and ended up making a film. And so here's just a couple minutes from there, just before I start talking. Let's see.
Run all you got! Run all you got! How much you gonna pay? How much you gonna pay?
I think everybody unanimously agrees with that, but it's not being spoken about, and like there's more emphasis on the on unions and things like that.
I keep on thinking of what that guy said, like in the press release, of just like, you know, that we're working against like 150, 125 years of chains, you know what I mean? And it's going to hurt a lot to break those. Just even being here, like I was kind of like weary about it. I don't believe in people inserting themselves and like deciding to do that for something else. And we're doing this almost on behalf of those people who can't do it themselves.
Yeah.
Almost, I feel like then we need to properly represent what they're going to be standing for.
I was born and raised in Mingo County. My dad was a coal miner. He died when he was 54, by the way. My grandpa was a coal miner. I'm here today because I want people to remember what really started this country. Before the union busters came in.
What do you feel about mountaintop removal and strip mining?
I think it's terrible. It's, you know, it raises the temperature. It floods every place it ever did. It floods immediately. There's nowhere to live, you know. Plus the water's so polluted you can't drink it.
What about other miners? Do they agree with you?
Well, the ones that are still working don't agree with me. The ones that are not, you know, do agree. You know, everybody's got to keep a job.
Sometimes the lonesome wind, it calls out like it knows me. And on a night like this, I don't know where to go, he shows me.
Okay, I'm Billy, I play the mandolin. My last name is Parsons. My brother just told me to say that.
I'm from Mercer County, West Virginia. It's very important to us to preserve the forests of West Virginia. Our dad is a mandolin builder, and as a mandolin builder, he uses native wood to Appalachia only. You know, a lot of the time, it's shunned to have people from outsiders or whatever, you know, fighting for West Virginia's rights, and I don't see why it's so. I'm really, really happy that, you know, all these people are willing to come from, you know, all over the place.
I thought it would be helpful if I just spoke a little bit about the filmmaking process in West Virginia and how we handle some of the ethical considerations about what to film and what the message was and what we were even doing, and see how that kind of plays into the questions in this part of the panel. So about ethics and questions that we were asking, really any time that I film, I think there are a number of considerations even outside of the law and what's legal when I'm filming someone that I try to be aware of. Legal things like people's citizenship status, people's probation status, if they have previous arrests or participated in direct actions recently, then they're not supposed to be doing certain activities. Direct actions that may be people breaking the law that might be criminalizing, that folks don't want to be shared images of. People's relationship to their gender and sexuality identities and how that might relate to their relationships with their families and people back home, people who might not want to be outed with the video, people who are doing underground organizing and really don't want to be identified and don't want a record of them being in certain protest spaces, and really just people's own preferences for whatever reason might not want to be filmed. So there's always the question of who you're filming, how you're representing them. And I think that how those questions play in really relate to forms of cultural organizing that Nadine was talking about, about sometimes having cameras and filming protests is about capturing what's going on, capturing this relationship with your political opponent. But other times it's really about the community building aspect and about prefiguring or thinking about other relationships and other social relations that might not be picked up by other media forms. And so in terms of video, I think definitely around video technology and how do we resist surveillance and this automatic capture all the time. How do we mediate the technology by building relationships with people and really creating cultures around consent and around permission and kind of the social technology that is always interacting with the actual video technology. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit, is about the social technology, kind of the social organization that all the cameras were plugged into to us, and how we did the filmmaking in West Virginia. So there was a huge media team in West Virginia documenting this march, which was a 5-day march. So there was a lot of activities every day. There were the march was at once, a conference. It was teach-ins all day. There were forms of direct action and protest, definitely. But there were a lot of spaces that we were filming and trying to represent and telling the story about what we were doing in West Virginia and the work around ending mountaintop removal. And there were different filmmaking constituencies there. So there were local filmmakers who lived in West Virginia who work every day documenting what's happening, both what the mining industry is doing, but also resistance efforts and organizing efforts. There were folks, which I identify with, kind of just visiting filmmakers, independents, who had video resources, were participating in the march already, and were kind of collaborating to document the event. And then there were other more serious filmmakers, so people who were working on their own feature-length films, or people working on their own series, working to document the event. And so basically, we set up a media center at the organizing hub, which every night we would get together while everyone was sleeping and basically go over the footage for the day, talk about what we captured, who got whose interviews, and plan for the next day as well. So if there was a march, who's going to be at the front, who's going to be at the back, who wants to do interviews for the day. Are there key people along the city that we're going to be in that we want to talk to that need to be a part of the story? And so that collaborative effort, I think, really created a lot of the quality of the media that was made from the march. And it was kind of contrasted to this more official media infrastructure that was there as well. So CNN did a piece as well, and they brought their 4x4 truck, and they would drive out every day to the march, maybe stay for half an hour, film some, and then leave. And they produced a piece, and if you compare the type of media that came out and the stories and basically the so what after watching both pieces, I think the contrast is really stark. And I think for me that's largely attributed to the collaborative nature of the piece and the way we went about the filmmaking and asking the questions about the stories that needed to be approached every day. I'm thinking about some of the principles that Molena was sharing from MMP about media work should tell stories that we can all see ourselves in. It should disrupt divisive narratives, myths, and stereotypes, and aim for building community, not just targeted audiences. And to me, the collaborative nature of the filmmaking and the counseling that we did every night is, in addition to sharing footage and really kind of nobody owned their own images, every night we would plug our hard drives into a computer and share our footage with each other, and then have really deep discussions about what do we need to share. And having a diversity of filmmakers coming from different places was important, because local folks could say, you know what, I know that person, they're my neighbor, I'm sure they would not want to be in this video, or they've said that they don't want to appear in this way, and we could share information that way. So the material was shared, we all had it, but there was the social process of figuring out what was important to share and what was not, which I think is part of this community building aspect and how we weave in media makers with organizers, with protesters, and the importance of building those connections. Yeah, I think even the piece that I ended up editing from my own footage, which was this piece was made separately from the march. One of the main stories and myths that we were trying to destabilize was this opposition between protesters coming in from the outside who just care about the trees and polar bears and people who have jobs on the line in West Virginia. And to really talk about how there were many, many people coming from many different places representing a lot of different interests that were opposing mountaintop removal on this one mine site. And so that was our goal, one of our goals in terms of the myth that we were trying to confront, and I think we were successful. And just as an aside, I think it's interesting to watch the CNN piece that was made at the same time, because it's essentially, I think there's actually, I tried to find it again, I couldn't find the video, but the text component online says environment versus jobs, the new battle of Blair Mountain. And that's the headline, and that's the story that they wanted to get out, and they felt like they could activate an audience around that kind of story. It just kind of goes to show the role that kind of this participatory approach could play in crafting the narrative, destabilizing these myths, and kind of proposing and suggesting new alliances and coalitions that could be made and can be forged in spaces like this march. So I think that's actually all I wanted to share about the process. I'd love to talk more about the film if you have specific questions about some challenges that we had, how we went about producing and sharing the media. But I thought that would be a good addition when we're talking about how images are used and what considerations go into it, that there's this whole social technology component that sometimes I think gets left out when we're talking about video technology and access and kind of the cameras themselves. When there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of practice and a lot of intention around the people operating the cameras and networking together and making those decisions collectively. I think that's about it for now.